Hello. You know, I might hold the Guinness World Record for the least employment time from onboarding till quitting. 200 minutes, I kid you not. It's about 15 years ago. I was unemployed for a long time, a year and a half. I was also a very young dad. It was rough. It was really rough. I was looking for a job. I probably interviewed for like 40 different places, and I couldn't get a new job. And then at the time I was living in Israel. My brother-in-law, he called me up and he arranged me this really cool position in Tel Aviv at a financial tech startup. And I was really excited. I mean, really. And I remember waking up early in Haifa, boarding the train, taking the train down to Tel Aviv. 8:15, I started onboarding. 11:45, I'm calling my wife and I'm telling her, "Baby, I'm coming home." And she's like, "What?" People thought I was nuts. My family was like, "Hey, what the heck, Michael? What are you doing?" And this thing of leaving jobs in the shorter than the longer term, this stayed with me. And I thought it was wrong. I thought it was like something was wrong with me. But then I got to see this long-term survey. And if you read through this, you see that there's an ongoing, what we call a disengagement problem in the workforce. It's not only the US, wherever you are right now, globally, 7 out of 10 employees don't like what they're doing. And you can read the quote there, "We are suffering a disengagement pandemic. This is a sign of global mismanagement." And the question is, so what? So what? So people aren't engaged at work. Why do we care? Well, here's the thing. When people are disengaged, they suffer. They're unhappy. You get high turnover. And if you're thinking financial impact, well, it reduces the profit per share. So disengagement in the workplace impacts the bottom line. I want to talk to you about today how organizations falter and kill engagement and what you can do about it. And here's a small hint, your influence pattern. So here's the problem. The command and control structure that we're seeing in today's workplace kills collaboration. This leads to unsuccessful organizations. This leads to disengaged communities. And the pattern that's underlying this entire thing is called a vertical influence pattern. It's a win and lose. We have this manager on top. He has resources. How I despise the term resource. If you're calling your vendor, your colleagues, your whoever a resource, stop it right now. I don't want to be known as a resource. I'm Michael. You don't want to be known as a resource. You have a name. Now here's the thing. It's 2019. If your company wants to survive digital disruption, you need a different collaboration model that doesn't lead to disengagement. In disengaged communities, there's this vicious cycle. So let's say you have your boss told you, "Hey, you have this new project, and in this new project you need help from other people in the organization." So guess what? You're going to go to these other people in the organization and you're going to ask for their help. And some of them, or maybe it's most of them, will say, "Hey, I'm going to help you." They'll do it nicely, right? So what will you do? You'll go to your boss and you'll tell your boss, "Hey, they're not helping me." And your boss will call their boss. And their boss will call them and say, "Why aren't you helping him or her?" And they'll say, "We're very busy. It's not in our interest." So they'll probably instruct them to help you out. Disengagement, vertical influence, leads to an unhappy workplace. In the last 15 or 20 years or so, we've seen this emergence of AGILE, collaborative clouds, teams working together, doing great stuff. Everybody wants to be agile today. As an agile coach, people call me, hey Michael, can you help us be agile? And what they're thinking, what your company might be thinking is, hey, let's hire an agile coach. Let's hire a scrum master. Let's put JIRA in place. Well, here's a newsflash for you. A scrum master that becomes a JIRA admin doesn't lead to an agile team and an agile organization that works well. At the bottom of it, successful organizations are built around engaged communities. These engaged communities are driven by horizontal influence. A lot of people talk about highly effective teams. Highly effective teams is not about building a team of 7 and 8 out of scrap, out of nothing. It's all built on small, person-to-person, dyad influence, triad influence. That is what we're trying to create in today's environment. Dyad and triad collaboration. I'm going to use the next 25-30 minutes to explain how you can excel in that and create really great, awesome teams. But first, let me explain what usually does happen when you roll out Agile. Agile drives a team-level engagement. And then people ask themselves, how do we scale that? So I'm a SAFe program consultant. I'm a scaled Agile coach. And I use this model. And when I teach my clients, I tell them, this is not a hierarchical model. The goal here, it's not to create top-down driven, shove it down the throat of the team. If you do that, you're going to fail. The goal for you is to build on the team-level collaboration upwards. So some companies tell me, you know what, we don't like scaled Agile. Let's do the Spotify model. If you look at the Spotify model, again, great idea. My colleague, Henrik Knieberg, I met him in Helsingborg, and we talked about the Spotify model. The Spotify model isn't about, hey, now I have a squad, let's create a tribe and bring a top-down manager to manage them. That's not the intent. The intent is to organically create collaboration, not drive it down, which is what I've seen other companies, when they're adopting the Spotify model, try to figure out, hey, who's the manager for that tribe? That's not the intent with the Spotify model. Unsuccessful organizations adopt vertical influence, and that results in a disengaged community. When you put a manager on a really good performing Agile team, you've just shut it off. You just killed collaboration. That's not what you want. We need to eradicate this disengagement pandemic. Each and every one of us can do that. I work with clients, I'll walk in, and in 5 minutes, I'll see the overall layout, how people are sitting with each other. I see the sunken faces. And the people are told, we're going to be agile. And they're like, we don't want to be agile. So the question is, how do we create these engaged communities? How do we drive successful organization? We inspire horizontal influence. Horizontal influence leads to great agile adoptions. With horizontal influence, we get to build amazing things together because I acknowledge you, you as a human being. We move away from interactions that are win-lose, that are aggressive, that create pain. One of the latest work I've done with a client, there was a lot of pain in the organization. It was of the user experience team. And I was telling them, guys, I don't want to create pain. Agile is not about pain. It's about working together collaboratively. Agile is creating stuff. It's not inflicting pain. If your Agile adoption inflicts pain on people, you're doing it the wrong way. We want to cooperate and collaborate. Allow me to take you on a journey on building communities. 4-step fundamental process: situation, perception, decision, strategy. If you're just an individual contributor, if that's how you see yourself, well, you can engage a community by changing your influencing patterns from vertical to horizontal. Now, if you're a manager watching this, if you're a leader, what you need to do, you need to build dyads and triads, because community building is about empowering horizontal influence without authority. Let's talk about these 4 building blocks. Let's start with situation. Here's the thing. We believe that when we see something, that's how it is. Well, here's a newsflash. The way I see a situation, the way he sees a situation, the way she sees a situation, it's different. We think that we see a certain reality and that's how it is. Well, you know what? Open 2 screens now, put one on Fox News, one on CNN. What do you think you're going to see? The same story? Of course not. Different situations. Now, in the past, there was a lot of talk about managing stakeholders. If we just manage the stakeholders and we lead them through the project, we'll be successful. Well, here's a newsflash for you. It won't. It doesn't work that way. Unsuccessful organizations focus on stakeholder management. They say, oh, you're very interested and you have a lot of power. I'm going to manage you closely. Oh, and you? Nah, you're users. You don't have any power. You may be interested. I don't care about you. I'm going to completely disregard you. How empowered do you think they're going to feel? No, this can't work that way. We need to change the mindset of how we engage our stakeholders. We need to build trust and agreement, because if you want to have an engaged workplace, you want to have engaged employees, you need to work through trust and agreement. We need to move from people who might be distrusting but with high agreement paying lip service to people who support us. So let's say you're in a meeting and there are 10 people in the meeting. How many do you think are completely with you? They're jamming. They're like, yeah, I agree with what they're saying. Probably 1 or 2 if you're honest about that. How many are completely against you? Probably the same number. What about all the others? They're what we call sitting on the fence. So what normally would people do? Where would they direct their efforts, so to speak? Now here's an interesting tidbit. Most people, most of the time, would direct their attention at those who are completely against their idea. Why do I do that? Now think about, why do you do that? If you're sitting in a meeting with 10 folks and you're pitching this awesome idea, why do you focus on the people who are against your idea? Because mostly, psychological speaking, we want to be liked. So next time we're in this situation, rather than focus on the person who's mostly against you, focus on the people who are on the fence. Show them the path. Engage with them. Show them how they can support the reality. Observe the reality. I was just saying, people think that their reality is the only reality that matters. It's the only reality that's out there. That's not true. The problem is, most of us, or 99.99% of us, are convinced that how we see things is the right way. Because that's how we see them, right? We're always right. We're always right. So if I'm in that meeting, I'm convinced that I'm right. And I'm engaged with that completely disengaged person trying to convince them, wrong, don't do that. Work to create a collaborative community with those that are neutral. So if I'm thinking about that, if I want to build an engaged community through horizontal influence, looking at the situation, I can empower that community when I explore trust-building behaviors with others. How do I build trust the easiest? I do reciprocation. Give and take. Quid for quo. That's actually a good thing on a small scale. I need to appreciate the others for who they are rather than fit them in small boxes. Hey, these are the bad stakeholders. Let's manage them this way. Oh, these are the good stakeholders. Let's manage them. That doesn't work that way. And I need to listen. In order to understand realities and situations, I need to stop and listen. That's what I need to do. I need to stop talking. I need to stop and listen to understand where they are, to engage them, to build a dyad, to build a triad, to have a meaningful conversation with just one other person. Take them for lunch tomorrow. The person that you usually don't get along with, take them to lunch. Listen. What's their background? How do they see reality? What's their reality? You are not always right. I am not always right. Let's move to the second pillar, the second fundamental, transforming our perception. What I believe in, how I perceive it, how I think others perceive it or see me. And that's a tough cookie. That's hard to get our heads around. So I want you to take some time and think about this exercise with me. Now, if it was a one-day workshop, we'd spend like 2 hours on that. We don't have all that time. So I want you to think about someone at work that you really dislike. Someone that you just can't stand. I want you to think about them. I want you to think about someone that you still have to work with and you just can't. Think about them. Maybe draw their persona. Maybe jiggle, maybe doodle on a napkin. Once you do that, write down 5 words that summarize that person's communication and influencing style. Now comes the hard part. Role play their behavior. Yeah, I really mean that. Find someone you're comfortable with. Could be your spouse, could be a parent, could be a sibling, could be a good friend, and role play their behavior. Because as you do that, you gain a profound freedom. You're suddenly able to perceive the way they perceive reality. Ask for feedback from that person as you're doing that. Hey, remember the 5 words I asked you to scribble down for that person? Ask the person you're role-playing to, hey, how did this come across? Compare the 5 words you thought that hated persona at work you dislike, blah, and so on and so forth, with the 5 words that you just got in this feedback as you role-played. What's the difference? That's a perception gap that you have. This is one of the most powerful exercises in overcoming disengagement, in getting collaboration with peers, with people you need to horizontally influence. Successful organizations move away from these patterns, these words that you've just captured. You know, years ago I served in the Israeli military, and one of the people who was working for me actually, I hated his guts. His name was NIR, just like my surname. Maybe he's watching it right now. I don't know. I just hated his guts, and I couldn't get along with him. So I went to at the time I had a coach, a Gestalt coach. She passed away last year. Her name was Netta Kaplan. She passed away at 89 years old. And I asked her, hey, what do I do? How do I get along with this dude I can't stand? And the funny thing is, she told me something. I'm going to share with you right now what she told me. She told me something that got me really angry. I was so upset with what she was telling me. Actually, after she said that, I went out. I slammed the door. I didn't see her for half a year. I was so upset. What she told me, it took me half a year to come around. She told me, Michael, he was a really good Gestalt therapist. And he said, Michael, breathe deeply and role play that guy for me, which I did. And as I was doing that, with her guidance, I gotten to see that the things in him that I couldn't stand were actually things in myself. Wow. Holy moly. And that's why it's so powerful. Because the people at work, mostly, you can't work with, have behavior patterns, have perception patterns that you don't like in yourself. That's why you find it so hard to work with them. That's the real reason. Now, it's funny. Let me give you a trick here. Let me give you a tool to make your life easier. So let's say you're late to a meeting at work. What do you say? You say probably, the alarm clock didn't work, there was bad traffic, the cat ate my homework, I dropped my phone in the Hudson or in the Charles in Boston or whichever river you live next to, wherever you're seeing this right now, and you're like, I'm not going to be on time for the meeting. So you go in the room and you give all of these lame excuses. Now here's the thing. What about if that horrible persona that you just thought about, what about if they're late for a meeting that you set up? A very important meeting because you set it up. What then? What do you say? What do you think? What do you say? What do you think? You're like, ho. Now hold me honest here. You're probably going to say, ho. They don't care. They're lazy. They're never on time. It's their personality you blame. You know, when my 17-year-old son, lovely kid, when he messes up, right? When he messes up, I'm looking at my wife and I'm saying, hey, that's the in-laws. That's my in-laws. That's my mother-in-law. No, I'm not supposed to say that. That's my father-in-law. Right? It's my in-laws' behavior. That's what, right? I'm not blaming environment. I'm saying, oh, why doesn't he do the dishes? That's my in-laws. Here's the recurring pattern. The recurring pattern is that when we mess up, we blame the environment. When folks we dislike mess up, we blame their personality. We don't blame the environment. We don't do that. So if you want to influence others and enable horizontal influence, if you want to increase your freedom, try thinking of some excuses, environmental excuses for those folks who really mess up. Because the environment impacts us much more than we care to admit. Let me share with you my thoughts about the perception fundamental in creating these engaged communities and horizontal influence. We try to influence others from our own gestalt, our own being. We impose our perceptions on those that we find the hardest to share our values with. Actually, what we do is called projection. We project on them. Our projection is a very powerful and a vicious human behavior. Right now, I might ask someone of the people around me that are shooting this, hey, do you need to go to the bathroom? And actually, what I'm doing is I'm projecting my need on them. For example, in a meeting, you might think to yourself, oh, the manager looks very, I don't know, any word, fill in the word. I'm very uneasy with my presentation. Actually, the person who's feeling that uneasiness is not your manager. It's yourself. So your worst enemy to influencing others is not others. It's the game that plays in your head. All influencing happens here. There's nothing out there. If you want to be a powerful horizontal influencer, play here. That's where it happens, not outside. Don't kid yourself. It doesn't happen outside. It all plays here. The third fundamental, I want to start with a story. Now, I call this Persuading the Bear, and I invite you to join on this story with me. So imagine that you really want to go traveling in Alaska. Find 2-3 good friends of yours, and you board a plane, you head to Fairbanks or Anchorage, and you go to Denali National Park. You really want to do that hiking journey you've dreamed about all these years. You have a big backpack, have a lot of food with you. You're planning to do camping and hiking into the Denali Wilderness, Denali National Park. And the first thing that happens as you deboard in Denali National Park office headquarters is you're given this pamphlet. And take a minute to pause and read through this pamphlet, because what you'll notice is that if you need to influence a bear in the wild, there's some conflicting directions. You need to really figure out, is this a grizzly bear? Is this a black bear? Sometimes black bears look grizzlish at a certain age. Sometimes certain gender of female grizzly bears look a bit blackish. It's hard to know. You need to check for the gender or ask them, which I don't know is something you really want to do. And you're reading through this and they're like, I don't know. But you've already invested, in going hiking in bear country. You also get this bear canister. It's a big kind of foolproof canister you can only open with a quarter that you need to have. Otherwise, you're basically stuck without any food because you can't open the canister. A bear can't open it, so you definitely can't. And you're also told that you need to camp in a certain place, and then 100 yards or 40 meters away, you need to do your cooking, and in a triangle, and 40 meters, 100 yards in a different location, you need to leave all the bear canister and stuff, and toothpaste and toothbrush and so on. So you're heading out, and it's always raining. You didn't know that because the pictures of Alaska always say it's like so nice and sunny. Once you're out in the wilderness, it's raining. You walk, and there's no paths, and you're in a backpack, and it's raining. It's all drudgy, and it's all gray, and all those great postcards that you've seen in the past. There's nothing really that you can see. And you go out for one night and 2 nights and 3 nights. You camp and you hike and you camp. And at some point it's like, oh, that's enough. We'll head back to the road. So you're heading back to the road. You find this nice little lake. You set up camp. You're changing your clothes. Actually, what you're doing is you're unclothing your wet clothes and you're putting more wet clothes because in Alaska you're always wet. And suddenly you hear your friend say, hey guys, there's a bear here. And you're like, yeah, of course there's a bear. There are many bears in Alaska. Now this friend of yours is kind of a prankster. You know him. And he's always been this prankster dude. So you're like, oh, okay. And then he says it again. Hey guys, there's a bear here. And you can hear kind of a tremble in his voice. And you're like, okay. And you shout out, hey, of course there are bears here. There are many bears. And he said, no, the bear is here. He's on this side of the lake. And you walk and you shout out, what do you mean he's this side of the lake? The lake is just like 3 meters, 10 feet away. But he doesn't answer. What you hear him doing is engage in the protocol for close bear encounter, which is raise his hands and say, go away, bear. Go away, bear. And he's speaking in Hebrew because he's a Hebrew friend of yours. Well, a Hebrew friend of mine anyway. He's saying lech mipodov, which is the same in English as go away, bear. And you're all out. You're with your underwear. Your third friend is out. He's holding pepper spray. The funny thing, he forgot to remove the trigger. So you're all like that, looking at the bear, waving your hands, go away, bear. And you're asking yourself, what are we going to do? That's a grizzly, by the way, we're seeing there. And if you remember about what your options are from the leaflet, you can push, pull, or withdraw. You can hold your ground, you can fight back, you can play dead, or you can climb a tree. And you look around, no trees. So that's off. That's off. The bear looks at you, trudges along. He's probably, I don't know, like 3 meters away. He's looking at that bearish look of his and thinking about should I eat them or not. Probably we weren't kosher, so that bear didn't eat us. And the funny thing is, I've taken this pamphlet later on, and I noticed that the same behavior patterns that we have in these scenarios are the same behavior patterns we have, ding ding, in our organization. We can push, pull, or withdraw when we're trying to influence others. I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. So same leaflet back at the office. Let's say it's not an encounter with a bear. It's an encounter with Bill and Lauren from finance. So if you see Bill and Lauren from finance, hold your ground. Don't move. Maybe they won't see you. If they see you, you can run away, or you can drop, play dead, or maybe they do a false charge to which you'll need to hold your ground, or you need to drop your pack. Conflicting directions. The funny thing is, we have a pattern of how we behave. This is called our energy style behavior pattern. When we're influencing others, we tend to adopt the same patterns. It's push, pull, and withdraw. The same behaviors that you can work through when you see a bear in the wild are the same behavior patterns that probably a lot of you adopted throughout your career. And I'm going to go through a few slides, and the game I'm playing with you is when you see that pattern that you're most likely to adopt, I want you to say, oh, that's me, that's how I behave. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way, it's okay. So you can probably be more of a push persuading kind of gal. I suggest, it will be a great idea. Or you can be more of a push asserting kind of person. I would like you to, I want you to, I need you to. Is that what you do? Maybe you use direct feedback approach as a push asserting kind of person. Or maybe you work with incentives. If you do this, then I'll do this for you, I'll do that for you. Or maybe you apply pressure. I haven't seen this a lot. This is not very common nowadays any longer. So we have push behaviors that people adopt and they're comfortable with. And we also have pull behaviors. Encouraging. Hey, tell me, explain to me, please. Yeah, that's interesting. Or maybe describe this to me. So that's pull encouraging. There's also pull sharing of feelings. Now, I haven't seen a lot of that in the workplace. This is one of the most powerful things you can do to impact others, to create a dyad, to create a triad, to involve people, to create an engaged community, to move away from disengagement, to influence others. This is so powerful. Hey, I feel helpless. I feel this was a great idea and it never worked out. I feel this is not what we should be doing right now. We should focus on that. This is pull involving sharing of feelings. So sometimes people will paint a picture. Hey, imagine in 2 years we could do this and we could do that. Well, that's a different style. We can talk to common interests this way. And we can listen. I talked about listening. I think that generally in the workplace today, we don't do this enough. Hardly at all. Everybody in the meeting is waiting to speak, speak, speak. Nobody ever waits to listen, right? You don't wait to listen. Oh, I'm going to listen now. I'm going to listen carefully what they're saying. What was that? Oh, that's a good idea. No, we work to speak. We don't work to listen. Why? Because we're always right. Remember, we're never wrong. In any situation, we're always right. So if we're always right, of course we need to be speaking and not listening. Any other approach is to reduce, withdraw, climb that proverbial tree and disengage. And this happens in some organizations as well. So what I challenge you with is think about what your comfort zone is. Think about how you normally interact in a situation. What is comfortable for you? And then tomorrow, or even today after you listen to this presentation, in the next meeting, tweak, change. Get some support from others. Get a support from at least one other person that you feel comfortable with, and change your approach. Always have a buddy. Always have a wingman when you're trying to change your approach, because you need support for that. So when I'm thinking about the decision process in building engaged communities and leading through horizontal influence, we have options. Many times you don't see that. We have options. And yet we tend to tread the same path, worn out by decades of use, because that's how our neural paths dictate that. So tomorrow, use a different strategy. Instead of push, do pull. Instead of pull, do push. And maybe you can, if you're always a person who's pushing and it never works for you, maybe you should chill out for a while and just listen. The last fundamental I want to share with you is an engagement strategy. Before I do that, here's an interesting article that appeared a while back in The Economist. And this was based on a research done globally with hundreds of participants. And the research was dissecting the communication patterns. It was about what we talk about when we talk. So people think that they talk to convey information. No, that's not what the research found. And it goes in line with everything that I've spoken about so far. People spend a lot of the speech time, probably 60%, simply by letting the other person know that they're listening. Conversation is an influencing tool that builds cooperation. Language is a tool to create new realities. When we're talking, it's a social bond. So, you guys there that are twitting and are messaging as I'm talking about this, what happened in the last 5-10 years is we're reliant much more on asynchronous Skypes and chats and messages and whatever you have out there for your organization to engage with others. There's a multitude of tools, right? What we're missing when we're using all these tools is the opportunity to create a social bond. And that leads to our disagreements, that leads to our miscommunication, that leads to why we can't get along with others. Because we opt for asynchronous typing, texting, and so on. So if you want to engage others, talk. We're social beings. We get social by talking, and by the way, by gossiping. I want to introduce this model for thinking about the strategy. You've probably seen models similar to that, and you might have even assessed your behavior style. And the model talks about 4 preferences for communication. This is not a predictive model. This is not a model that tells you what you need to do. It's a model that enables change. That's how I like to think of this model. So if you think about 4 preferences, we find that there are people who are more people-oriented, high responsive, not as directive, We have people who are process-oriented, less directive, less responsive. We have more action-oriented over to the right here. They're more directive, they're less responsive. They have idea-oriented. Now here's the thing, there's nothing wrong. You can be anything you want. However, here's what usually happens. Whatever your preference is, it manifests in the words that you're going to use. Don't believe me? Go through your emails. Go through your PowerPoint decks. Go through your texts. Go through your conversation. Record yourself. See the words you're using. If you're, for example, a people-oriented person, you'll use more words such as needs and sensitivity and relationship and beliefs and cooperation and team spirit. And that's okay. The problem or the challenge is that when you meet people outside your comfort zone, outside the people you normally work with, in your cross-cultural, cross-functional team, they have other preferences. And your message doesn't reside well with them if they're not comfortable with these words. Now, people might think that HR folks tend to be people-oriented. So it's not that they became HR folks and they became people-oriented. It's the other way around. First, they have a certain preference, and that leads them to decision and choices throughout their lives. And if, for example, your idea style, I'm idea style, by the way, I hear the word opportunity, I light up. I hear the word concept, innovation, potential, creativity. These are the words that light me up. Opportunity where? What? I heard that? So I'm an idea style kind of guy. And then you got process style folks, right? They're our quality guys. They're more about the facts and the details and procedures and observation and proof. Now you see that I probably don't get along with them very well. And you're right. You're right. I can't stand it. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not reading. I can't stand it. It's very hard for me. As an Agile coach, as a management consultant for 20 years now, I know that I'm going to run into issues with people who are process-oriented. Actually, in the project I'm working right now, there's this guy in the UK, he's a great guy. He's very much process-oriented. And I'm up here, this is how I'm thinking, and he's over there, and there's nothing wrong about that. It's just that it's hard for us to communicate. It's hard for me to accept what he's seeing in the project as his reality, and what I'm thinking about the project is my reality. And we both need to collaborate in order to have an amazing Agile transformation. Remember I said it's all about dyads. It's all about creating horizontal influence. So because I know about the model, when we had an offsite, I spent about 3-4 hours just chatting with him, understanding more about him. What does he live? What does he do? What is he like? And so on, to create that bridge. So I don't only see him as a process-oriented, even though these are the words he's comfortable with. Then we got our PMs. The keywords that project managers like to use and senior executives are things like results and objectives and performance and deals and challenges and decisions. Now let's think about what happens. Yeah, there's a project meeting. And in the project meeting, you have the PM, and he'll sit down, and there's a big deck there, 8-slide deck, and he'll say, or she'll say, oh, this was a very important project, and the objectives are all there, and the performance is there, and blah, blah, and blah, blah. And the process preference, communication preference people will look at that and they'll say, that doesn't sit very well with me, because there's no proof that our release is ready. He wants to release, she wants to release. Well, we don't think it's ready. And me, I'm the idea-oriented. I'm looking at that deck and I'm saying, yeah, it's okay for this release, but what's the big picture? You know, the PM is all about minutia, daily, you know, red, yellow, green. That's not what interests me. What's the opportunity? Hey, 2 years down, we can release this amazing thing. That's me. And in the same time, the HR, the people-oriented folks will sit in the meeting, will look around everybody and will say, this was a very hard project. People were working 24/7. They've put everything they had. I just need a hug. I just need a hug. And that's that's the problem that we have in creating the engaged community. Because each and every one of us speaks with the words that they're comfortable with. Amongst their colleagues, they're usually comfortable because they use the same words. That's why they're colleagues. That's why they hang out with those folks. That's why when they sit down for lunch, you'll find them sitting in these different pods. However, if you want to create great results and engaged communities, you have to break the pod somehow. We got to let people who normally don't interact with one another interact with each other. And it starts with you. tomorrow or even today. Grab that person you normally don't speak with because you're not comfortable with how they're speaking. If you want to create a great organization, an engaged organization, reach out. Create one meaningful other dyad, other connection. And if you want the Z model for this, you can review that on your time. If you're presenting to a mixed team of 10, 15 people, work through your message. Look through your email. Is your email that's very important that you're sending out for something really, really important in the project, is it touching all bases? Does it handle the project, the action orientation, preference? Does it handle the process, the people, the idea? Are you checking all boxes? Or is your message just me, 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 me? What I like to hear, the words I'm preferring, the communication pattern I like. Play with that. So we talked about 4 fundamentals of building engaged communities and creating these horizontal influence, adopting horizontal influence patterns. I want to leave with a few thoughts. First of all, what makes Agile so dangerous? It's not your Jira Scrum Master. If your Scrum Master is doing Jira, that's nice. If that's all they're doing, you're not adopting Agile. You're doing the same thing, just with new tools. The Atlassian tools don't create better agility. They support agility. Scaled Agile is a way to scale really good functioning Agile teams. If you don't have that, how can you scale that? What makes Agile so dangerous? It's dangerous because it drives horizontal influence. It threatens unsuccessful organizations. When I'm coaching organization as an enterprise coach, I look at the patterns of behavior. I look at mid-level management. I look at senior executives and I tell them, you want this to work? You want Agile to work? You want the transformation to be successful? Build the behavioral patterns that support it. Agile works when we build on the teams and we create more collaborative and more team clouds of teams, collaboration clouds of teams. What can you do? How can you use horizontal influence to build these engaged communities? Listen. Listen, because you're not always right. I'm not always right. I make mistakes. I know about them. We all make mistakes. That's human. Agile is about making mistakes and being forthcoming, honest about them. That leads to trust building. It's unbelievable. When we acknowledge the mistakes we make, it builds trust. When we listen to others, we build trust. Horizontal influence is the antidote to the command and control behaviors that are killing employee engagement, that are suffocating people in the organization. Engage with one other, 2 others that you normally don't work with. If you want to build a great team, don't start at the 7-8 person team level. Start with 1 or 2 others. Invite me to a workshop. Invite me to speak. I'm very happy to share this. I'm really passionate about this. I can't say enough how passionate, how it makes me so angry every time I walk to the organization and I see the same command and control structures and people heads, faces are down and they're all suffering. This is not about suffering. It's about creating amazing, awesome organization. Facing digital disruption is about doing that. You know, if I'm thinking about, okay, so what's next? It's 2019 already. We've known all of these patterns. We've read about the last 60, 70 years, and we're still trying to solve the challenges of tomorrow with the tools from yesterday. Top down, command and control. Hey, you do this. Hey, you do that. Hey, you do this. It doesn't work if you want to create greatness. It doesn't work if you want to create awesome. It doesn't work if you want people to get up in the morning and say, hey, I want to go to work. I like it at work. 70% don't. So if we want to solve the challenges tomorrow, we need to stop using the tools of command and control, of shoving it down the throat. I really thank you for taking the time and listening through what I think is a very important topic. I've captured my thoughts in several books. There are actually 10 of them. My latest is actually an engaged community book. It's called Chickens Learn Lean and Agile. It's a project that I invite you to join. It's a book that's agile, it's iterative, it's being written as we speak. based on your feedback. We've created an engaged community on Medium. Feel free to reach out, to connect to that community, to share your thoughts. Based on your thoughts, based on this horizontal influence, we're going to engage with you and reflect that, your thoughts, in the book. Thank you again. I'm Michael NIR. It was a pleasure spending this